Thank you so much for joining us online. Hey, since you're here, sorry, had a moment there.
Was I saying something?
Where
Hello,
am
Michael.
What day is it? What year is this?
To explain, I mean, he literally just came in from being a clinician, so we got some kind of grace for him.
Yeah, there's
Listening to problems and
a
everything.
few brain cells that are fried.
Yeah,
right now.
that's awesome.
No, no. Thanks so much for tuning in. Please like and subscribe. Put this out there. Share the videos. If you like what we're doing, there's a link below that you can click on to give to the ministry. We also have an app on the Apple Store and the Google Play Store. Yep. It is called The Gathering Echo. So when you look that up, you will have to type that in. The Gathering Echo. Don't type in New Testament Church because it won't come up. But when you see that, you can download it. You can give on there. You can listen to sermons on there. You can send us messages. There's all sorts of things there. So obviously, while you're here, jump into the stream, jump into the comment section rather, and talk to us. Let us know what you got going on. Ask us questions. Throw in your input on what's being said. So tonight we're gonna jump off of Sunday. So if you haven't listened to Sunday, or if you weren't here in person, which we also encourage you to do, is to come out. But if you weren't here and you haven't heard it, please go back and listen. On Sunday, I talked basically off the heels of the previous Wednesday. These guys got into, along with Juice, who's not with us tonight, but obviously we miss him and love him. But they were talking about patterns, and those patterns, that conversation led into a conversation about systems. And so as a clinician, I'm trained to think systemically, right? So that is the type of therapeutic approach that I take. In other words, everything sort of works together, right? It's all interdependent. So the people in your life, the social construct that we live in terms of our culture and our society, our country, our state, our town, whatever the case is, right? All of that is hyper interdependent. So it's all depending on each other. Even within your body, there is this incredible interdependence that you can't have the lungs operating without the heart operating, without the brain operating, without these various other functions that are taking place. And so within that idea, or within that framework, we jumped off of what Jesus did for us as he came in the form of a man at a specific time into a specific culture, and he more or less infiltrated what we were doing, the actual system that was at work or that was at play during that time. The Roman system, right? You had the things that were happening in the world at large with these great powers, not least Rome, obviously, being the greatest power of the time. And then within the religious context of the Jewish Jewish religion of Judaism. And within that system, Christ utilized what was already there, what was already in place. He utilized their stories and their metaphors and their ideas and their prophets and their teachers and their forefathers to establish a new system, to put something new into the works. And if you go and read, you can read the entire book of Hebrews, but Hebrews chapter 10 sums it up pretty well, that the old system, or the law, the system of the law, was a foreshadowing. It was just a shadow type of what was to come. And that was this greater system that Jesus was going to establish. And he did. And this new system brings us out of those shadows. It brings us out of the veiled understanding of God, and it puts us face to face with God. It puts us literally in the same space, breathing the same air with God. And that's where we understand, or we come to recognize our perichoresis, or our our interdependence upon God. because even the idea of perichoresis is the idea of interdependence, right? There's not one part without the other part. That you don't have the Spirit without the Son, and the Son without the Father, and the Father without the Spirit, and so on and so forth. But they're all always together at once in the same space. And so within that, we come to understand or recognize our new system or our new way of operating is in Christ at all times. You're never not in Christ. You're never not redeemed, totally redeemed in Him at any given moment.
Right.
That's what He came to for us to realize, right? For us to come into that new system. Now, obviously, change can be difficult. And so there are a couple of different types of change that we see specifically that was discovered and the terms coined by a man named Jay Haley through the MRI Institute in Palo Alto, California back in the 70s. He and a group, as well as another crew over in Italy, started a new way of looking at psychotherapy and training folks and teaching folks and so on and so forth. But the two types of change that they recognized were at work in people's lives was first order change, which is as simple as changing a behavior, right? So, in the mornings you get up and you get ready for work and you leave, but you don't make up your bed. But the first order change would be in the mornings you get up and you make up your bed and then you go, get ready for work and leave. That's a first order change. That's just a simple surface change, behavioral change, something like that. However, second order change is something more like the belief that's being held, right? So it's like, why do I make my bed up in the morning, right? And if I can change the belief, then I can actually change that behavior. Yeah. I can actually change the entire system, and I can change it for the long haul, right? So over the course of perhaps a lifetime. And so that second order change, the belief, that's what has to be changed. Now, there again, we don't like change. It's uncomfortable. It's difficult. It requires a lot of energy. It requires a lot of attention and effort. And so when those changes come, or when new information comes into the system, right? So i.e. Jesus comes into the system, the change is difficult. And so we can even look into the scripture and see even someone like a Peter, who he has this belief. He holds these beliefs, and you actually talked about the story a couple of Sundays ago, where he's in a trance, and he gets hungry, and then he sees these animals, and God says for him to eat, and he's like, well, I can't eat these things because they're unclean. Well, that's a belief that he held, right? It's a belief from the old system. And God told him, you can't call what I've redeemed unclean. You don't have that right. Why? Because it's a new system. Yeah. There's a whole new system at play. Yeah. And so when he changes that belief, right, then he's able to get up and eat the food. And not only that, but he goes into a whole new environment with a group of people that he sees as unclean, right? And obviously, we understand that this is a lead up, right, into what he's about to encounter or experience. And when he gets into this new experience, he recognizes that, that old belief has to go away. It has to be dropped off. But it takes a couple of pretty incredible encounters. The first being a trance and God literally speaking to him. And then the second being that he comes into this place where he thinks that these people are unclean or they're unworthy or whatever the belief is. They start speaking in tongues. They start, speaking in a language that he knows or he's heard before. Yeah. And he says, wait a minute, these people haven't been baptized in water and yet they're filled with the Spirit. Yeah. Now my belief has to change. Right. And so within that second order change, that's where we see the change in belief, which is the change in the system as a whole. And so, from Sunday, coming out of all of this and all that was said and the shenanigans that we saw, what you got?
Well, even with what you just said about Peter, so like in the maybe like you see it in sort of orthodoxy or episcopacy and different types of Christianity like that. You have the idea of like if something is like a valid baptism or a valid ordination or something like that because of apostolic succession, or it was done by a bishop, or confirmed by an actual priest who is an ordained priest. So in our minds, when we say like, all right, well, we're not Episcopal, we're not really Anglican, we're not Orthodox, we don't really follow that priesthood pattern. Does that make, if you say valid, does that make what we experience invalid? And they would even say no. They say, no, it's not invalid. And this is what's really kind of beautiful about the whole tradition, is it's not invalid. They just call it illicit, meaning that it goes outside of the rules.
Yeah.
That suddenly something stepped outside of the system, and something either, this is typically the system that we've used since the beginning of the church, that there's apostolic succession. Jesus laid hands on the apostles laid hands on the early church, and the early church has been laying hands on people ever since and ordaining ministers, priests, bishops, you name it. And so from the first century to 2024, we've been following the apostolic succession. Somebody got touched by Jesus, and that person, on and on and on and on and on through 2,000 years, it's been going this systematic way to make it valid. But sometimes it becomes illicit because it goes outside of that norm. And suddenly you realize that there's something else at play here, that God is either interrupting my system or using my system. That's like good. With Peter, he uses Peter's hunger and says, I can work with this, and I'm going to take you kind of outside of that norm. I'm going to take you, and it's going to be an illicit thing because it's not going to be the normal valid. Well, these animals aren't valid. This is not a valid thing for me to do. And suddenly it becomes illicit. Suddenly it becomes something that's not the norm. It's outside of all the rules that he set for himself, or that were set for him by his religious belief. But the one that really hit me on Sunday was John 1. It ends up in 51, where it's Nathaniel, who, this is really what when you were preaching Sunday, this is what I just kept thinking of. In John 1, 46, 45, somewhere around that range to the end of the chapter, here comes Nathaniel, and he's saying this stuff about Jesus, and then Jesus says, all right, well, here's an Israelite with whom there's no guile. There's nothing hidden with this guy. He's going to let you know how he feels. He's going to let you know what he's thinking. He's going to let you know everything that's going on in his head. But then Nathaniel says, you don't even know me. How can you say that about me and you don't know me? And then Jesus lets him know, buddy, I've been a part of your system that you've set for yourself from the beginning. I saw you under the fig tree. I saw you in Adam trying to clothe yourself. I saw you in the beginning when you were found in the fallen nature, and you've been trying to use this system to cover yourself, but I've been working in that system for me to be your covering, for me to be the thing. Is that's what God does with them. They're trying to develop their own way of protecting themselves, trying to develop their own way to cover the thing that they know that they've gotten wrong. And God says, well, let me be the one that covers you. Let me give you a new operating system. Let me give you a new way to do that. And that is the thing that changes the belief, which again, the second order change was just crazy to me, because it is a way of saying, let's exchange not just behaviors and patterns, but let's exchange belief. Let me give you my belief. So for Nathaniel, you're thinking like, here he is doing the same thing that his forefathers have always done. He's trying to use a system that doesn't provide the right belief. Now it's different, I think, with like with what you were saying Sunday. Like, systems are necessary. Like, your body is made of systems. Your world, everything around you is made of systems. But as a clinician, you pointed out, it's like, all right, sometimes these systems fail, and sometimes it creates other hazards and problems that arise from that point, from that moment. So for them, it's like, you're already using leaves for a temporary thing. They're disconnected from their source, so they're not going to continue to live. They die, and it's going to break down over time. They're going to get crinkly, and you're all of a sudden you're going to be wearing your fall outfit, and it's going to go to pieces. So with Nathaniel, that's what I kept thinking is, here's this guy that's continually trying to cover himself up, continually trying to use the system that he thinks works, but it never does change his belief. But here's Jesus in this moment when he says that to him. He falls to his knees, calls him the Son of God, says that you're my teacher, you be my rabbi. And he's just amazed. But Jesus' response is like, you think that was amazing? You think because I saw you under the fig tree you're amazed by that. He's like, you haven't seen anything yet. And the thing that gets me is the way that Francois translates it. It's I'll come back to that too. I got to remember to come back to this one thing that you said about the perfect storm. But it was in John, not First John. It's regular John. It's regular
John
is the
chapter
official.
1.
Yeah, it's the official scholarly term for the book of the Gospel of John. Regular John. High octane John is also, that's probably Revelation.
Would the real John please stand up?
Will the real John please stand up? Standard John. Regular John, chapter 1,
Big
verse
bad John.
51. Big bad John's a good one too.
Nice.
Francois translates it this way in the Mirror Bible. If you've not gotten one, that's something that you should look into. But Francois Dutois says it this way. He says, John 1:51, truly I say unto you, and he points out that the you there is a singular you. So he's talking to Nathaniel. Truly I say to you, because of who I am, you, plurally, all of you, basically. So it's basically, Francois is from South Africa, so he wouldn't have used the word y'all. So truly I say unto you, Nathaniel, because of who I am, y'all will surely see this communication between the heavenly sphere and earth thrown wide open, and the celestial messengers of God ascending and descending upon the incarnate Son of Man. And then he says this, heaven and earth meet in the incarnate one. So it's this space that's been provided and created. It's almost like there has to be the area for the work to occur. There's this place where everything happens.
Yeah.
And for what he's saying here, at least in the person of Jesus, like what you said Sunday, Jesus is the one that comes and gives us this second order change and changes the belief to suddenly now heaven and earth become the place where heaven meets earth, and heaven doesn't just meet earth just for his sake, but it's so that y'all will surely see the communication, that there's a communication from the heavenly sphere thrown wide open, and the celestial messengers, he says angels ascending and descending upon the incarnate Son of Man, which is interesting because the way that Jesus automatically goes out with it, he says angels ascending and descending. So it's almost like there's first this ascension, this thought that goes upwards, but really there's so many different metaphors you can throw in right there, is that if they're just like in the days of Noah, if their imaginations and their thoughts were only downward and evil, they're only looking down, they're only thinking downward, their hearts are imagining things that are negative and bad, their belief system has not gone through this second order change, and now they need a new belief.
And I think about too, like especially anxious individuals. The one thing that they'll do is they will imagine scenarios.
Really?
They will play out movies in their head. And I heard Damon Thompson say it like this, playing out movies in their head that will never take place. They'll never happen. But especially anxious people, they will ruminate. So they'll sit and think about a situation, whatever it is, right? And here are the 5,000. There will be one after another after another calculations, exactly. One after another after another after another. It will not stop, right? Their brain is what they'll say. My brain won't shut off. It's why I can't sleep. That's why I can't focus at work. It's why I can't, all these things, right? It's why I'm distracted or I forget things, because what are they doing? They're ruminating. They're sitting there thinking about this stuff over and over and over. Well, if I say this, then they'll probably say that, and then this will happen, and that'll happen, and then this will happen, and that'll happen. And by the end of it, literally, the apocalypse is taking place. There's sea monsters coming out of it. You know what I'm saying?
It's like WebMD, looking up your symptoms on WebMD.
Exactly.
You're going to die.
Like, yep, I've got 14 different types of cancer and diabetes.
It's
like
Ben Stiller in Long Came Polly. He's the risk assessment.
Yeah, that's right.
The risk analysis guy.
Yeah. That's 100%. That's it. So
I can't eat those peanuts on the bar because how many hands have been in the peanuts,
right?
And where have those hands been, and what diseases do they carry? Yeah,
it's this never-ending train of thoughts, right? And when what did you say? What did you read there? That
in the mirror.
I don't know why that made me think of that. anyway, so the imaginations, though, right? When the imaginations are going off,
like
right?
Noah
So
and
it's those, the thoughts going up
Yeah,
and down.
yeah.
So the negative thoughts, right? It's and they're ruminating on that.
Yeah.
They're staying on that. Like you said, there is this ascension in thought. So there has to be a change in the thoughts, because what happens is 9 times out of 10 is they come up with a scenario that they 100% believe is going to happen.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is what's going to happen.
Yeah.
If I do this, X is going to happen, right? Here's the equation. A plus B equals X. And that's what they've settled on. But the problem is, one, they haven't actually confronted the issue, right? So they have no idea what's really going to happen. But the thing is, they've created a belief in their own mind. And it's like thinking of I think of what you think about me, right? I think I know what your opinion of me is based on how you looked at me, how you said that, how you said hello, how you shook my hand, how you cut your eyes a certain way, or whatever, right? I believe, I have this belief now. Oh, he thinks I'm an idiot. Oh, he thinks I'm ugly. Oh, he thinks or she thinks I'm this, and she thinks they think I'm a bad parent because I fussed at my kid in front of them, right? But those are the types of machinations, the things that are rolling around in their heads, in people's heads. And to your point, there has to be this ascension of thought. You have to go up from that. You have to get away from that, right? Those calculations have to go away, and your imaginations have to go upwards. And you have to, get away from that. And then as it goes up, into the spirit or into that realm or whatever the case is, right? Then it can descend back down into your incarnation, right? And that's where you can see that second order change. But it's good.
That's the embodied cognition, though. That's where
That's good.
it's in your body.
It's good.
And your body, through that experience, you're becoming aware.
Yep.
Yeah. That was 51 you read, right?
Yes, sir.
Out of the mirror. So verse 50, Francois notes under that verse, which is when Jesus said, "You believe."
Oh, yeah.
So you believe because I said that I saw you sitting under the fig tree. You haven't seen anything yet. Francois' notes say, also the greater realization that the mission of Jesus was to introduce us to ourselves again, so that we may know even as we have always been known. We have forgotten what manner of people we are. He knew us before he formed us in our mother's womb, which ties right into your system failure. That was a system failure for Nathaniel.
Boom.
System failure.
Yep.
All his analysis went kaput.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
All my internal narrative just went all to pieces, because Jesus says, "I know exactly who you are."
Yeah.
And Nathaniel's like, "You don't know me."
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we say. Like, you don't know me.
Yep.
You don't know what's going on in my head. Until Jesus is like, "Yeah, I actually saw you under the fig tree."
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, that doesn't specify why that's specific, but something happened under the fig tree. And it's more than likely him going through something analytical in his brain under the fig tree, contemplating some kind of scenario, contemplating how I'm going to keep the hold of this life that I'm trying my best to keep from busting at the seams like we do. How am I going to pay all my bills, make it to work on time, keep this one here, keep this going, spin all these plates, having that moment. And Jesus is right with him in that moment. He's like, "I'm with you under the fig tree." And he's like, "Wow, what? Well, you're the king of the world, man. you're God." And he's like, "Well, yeah, but you haven't seen anything yet.
Yeah.
You haven't seen anything yet." So Brent texted earlier today, because we didn't think you were going to be here. Awesome that you are now.
Great.
Brent texted what he got from Sunday, and he wanted to jump into Nathaniel. So he sent me just John 1, the verses, and I didn't read that. I actually had a vacation day today, so
Congrats.
Standard John.
Standard.
I actually had a vacation day today. It was very good day today. Spent some time with the family, and actually, I know that in our society this is frowned upon. I took a nap today.
Yes.
I took a nap today, and Jesus loved naps. Jesus was all about naps. So I took a nap today, and during that nap, I had a dream. Okay, now I have tried to. It's not working too well.
Not great.
But I didn't have anything. I woke up from the dream and it was pretty vivid.
Yeah.
So I sit down. Kristen had left to go get the children, from school, and she had to take Melody to an appointment. So I sit down. And I just start writing down, and as I don't know if you guys do this, but if you write down a dream, like as soon as you have it, you'll start remembering the dream that you thought you'd already lost, right? So that's what happened. So in this particular dream, I'm getting ready to start a stream here at the church, okay? And for those of you a little behind the scenes here, we have a soundboard. It's nothing too hard for you to imagine. Have a soundboard, have different things that we have to do to get the stream out to you guys. So in the dream, I'm setting up the stream, I'm getting the service ready, except, in your dreams, everything, the landscape's different sometimes. You're at the church, but the church looks different, and it's somehow the old church that you used to go to, that type of deal. So, so I'm getting the board ready for the stream in my dream, and I do something to the audio, and I mess the audio up, and nobody can hear through the speakers. I'm frustrated about that, and you guys are here. Pops is here. Juice is here. There's all kinds of people in the dream, and everybody's in the spirit except me. Like, everybody's ready for the service. They're in God, and I'm worried about getting this stream started, and I'm just frustrated. Well, then I say something I shouldn't have said in the dream in church. Like I said a wordy dirt in my dream. All right, and I said it kind of under my breath, but there was this lady that I used to go to church with years ago that heard it. So when she heard it, she immediately told me, like, your mom and dad didn't raise you to say stuff like that. And I get into this rebuttal with her of, like, all the stuff that I got going on. It's very Nathaniel-like here. Yeah. Like, I got all this stuff going on and blah, 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 blah. And it was like, and this is really wild, but when I was talking to her in the dream, it was like I was speaking at the speed of light. Like, I was just winning the argument, right? And it felt good. Like, I was eviscerating this lady. I mean, I was justifying myself, right? But in that, like, I sped everything up, and it was really odd. And then the landscape changed, and the only way I know how to explain this is the landscape changed in the dream, and somehow my arguing with her threw me into another scenario where I'm, like, in this combat in Falston. I'm fighting with this guy. I don't know who the guy is. And he throws a stick at me. I catch the stick, and we start. I mean, it's a vivid dream. All right, and I'm going somewhere with this. Yeah, so
I'm with you. I love stuff.
All right, so the guy gets in his car because he throws a stick hard at me. Like, I say a stick. Do you know what a lineberry cart is? Like an old manufacturing, like those buggies that got in manufacturing plants. They're got the big steel wheel on it, and they got stakes that you can stick on each side and push it. Yep. So he throws one of them at me. And I catch it in midair. It's like supernatural. It was awesome. Yeah. All right. And he was
John Wick.
And then he started running from me because I caught it like I was like I was the chosen one, right? Yeah. So I start running at him. He gets in his car, drives away, and somehow it's like when that happened, my connection with that guy evaporated. I didn't know the guy, but I could have knew the guy. But it was all tied into me arguing with her in that moment. So I'm writing all this down today. And all of a sudden, I feel like God gave me interpretation on all of it. So the first thing was, for here, and maybe you guys can connect with this, sometimes when you're in ministry or you're doing your church thing or however you want to put it, this can become so task-driven that you miss the Spirit. This can become so task-driven that you miss the Spirit. Like you're so focused on getting it done, and you miss it. And that was what was happening in the dream. So the second thing was I argued with her, and in that arguing, God spoke to me like, okay, because you proved your point. For proving your point, you fast-forwarded time. And your reward on this planet is the present. Like, the present is the gift. Wow. The present is what Nathaniel had with Jesus under the fig tree. Man. That's what Jesus is snapping Nathaniel into. Yeah. Like, you're in the now. So in me taking time to win that argument, I literally took time for myself and put my life into warp speed. Wow. And that's how you wake up and you're 35, 40 years old, and you've spent your life trying to uphold all these different narratives and standards, and you're Nathaniel sitting under the fig tree. Yeah, it's click. Yeah. Exactly. Wow. And
Adam Sandler movie for that.
So I sped through that, and but the main thing I wanted to share from this was in any way, it was like I was watching my life as a movie. Yeah. in the dream.
Yep.
And do you guys have dreams like
Yep.
that?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It's kind of like scene by scene.
Yeah.
All right. So you've heard
You're
of
outside yourself.
Yeah. So you've heard of the near-death experiences. We've talked about
yeah.
that even on here some. So one thing that's common with the NDEs is a life review.
Yeah.
And you have a life review. Like these people that have these near-death experiences, they literally have a life review of every stage of their life, like in a split second of time.
Yep.
That was like what that dream was, and all of a sudden, it clicked with me. Like, do you realize? Like, it's like God was just hitting me with it. It's like, all right, are you awake now? Because I woke up physically, and then spiritually, in a moment, understanding came like it did for Nathaniel.
Yeah.
It's like, do you understand who you are now?
Wow.
Do you understand this is not just some random happening? Pops talked about what he got from your message Sunday was you can miss the value of of who you are.
Oh yeah.
And before you know it, you're taking yourself to the pawn shop.
Yep.
And you're giving yourself you're settling for a lesser self. You're settling for a lesser lifestyle. You're settling for a lesser purpose.
Yep.
You're settling for just going through the motions.
Yep.
And and I think that's what Nathaniel was going on with Nathaniel. There was no guile in him. I mean, he was straight up. I mean, he was a straight up guy. But Jesus wanted Nathaniel to see, like, there's purpose to you being here.
Yeah.
And I think tonight is a significant day for us to be saying this, because I think, whether what side of the aisle you may stand on, like it or not, 50% of our nation is on a kind of a disenfranchised level right now.
Yeah.
So they need to hear, you got purpose.
Yeah.
We've got purpose in this moment, whether things went the way you thought they would, whether things didn't. Yeah. Whether your life has led you to this moment and you're where you want to be or you're not. If you miss the moment, if you miss the current reality, you're missing everything.
Yes.
And like, I probably shouldn't have went in that deep a detail with the fast forwarding, but I think it's significant because I can think of so many arguments that I've had, whether in the church or in my adult life, with my friends, with my family. The need to be right robbed me of the present. The need to have my narrative right robbed me from the communication and the connectivity between my brothers and my sisters. And you talked about, you used a word in you used a word at the beginning, the interconnect. Was it the
interdependence?
Interdependence. Yes. If you have to be right about everything, the interdependence that if I have to be right about everything, the interdependence that I could get from you two is gone for that moment.
Yeah.
Now you can snap out of it and you can wake up, and that's what happened to Nathaniel. He had just an epiphany. Oh my God, Jesus saw me under the fig tree. This guy saw me under the fig tree, which means he saw himself in me, and vice versa. So, which leads me to this thought. For the gamers out there, and we've talked about video games. I wish Doc was here tonight because this would really, really, really it would hit him hard. For a first-person video game, which means you are the player, you are the avatar, right?
Yep.
This is where my mind went. This is a movie I watched called Ready Player One. I won't get into the movie, but it's the idea that you're in this video game, and you are the avatar. Now, you're sitting there. If you're a gamer at home, you're sitting there with your controller. You're playing the game, but on the screen, you're an avatar. You are a character in that game. Okay.
You was out of your own eyes.
I can tell you, as sure as I've felt anything in a long time, I felt like God was saying, mankind may have its best analogy and metaphor for what spirit realm versus natural realm is in the first person. In the metaverse, or to actually be a first person in a game. And it hit me like as I watched my life review, or as I had those scenes and I compared it to the near death experiences, and you have your life review. That's what happens is we get stuck in this thing, like you talked about. You get almost stuck on a level. You get stuck in this mindset of you just got to get here, you just got to do that, and you forget we're set for a purpose. Like He created us from the very beginning. And that's what makes this revelation, it's what makes the mirror so amazing, because it constantly takes us back to John 1:1. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was face to face with God.
Yeah.
So that is your video, that, if you will. I know it's a little bit of a leap, but if you don't take a leap, you're never going to go anywhere.
Right.
Take the leap. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was face to face with God. So there's your game.
Yeah.
God chose you to be His avatar on this beautiful earth,
Yeah.
for you to have a purpose. And what's the purpose? The interconnectivity to bring the earth under subjection again.
Yeah.
Like creation is groaning and travailing for the manifestation of what? The sons of God.
Yeah.
Well, what is that? You just realize you're in the game again.
Yeah.
And I feel like I had that moment today.
Yeah.
Like, oh my goodness, I remember I'm more than just this.
Yeah.
I'm more than just this flesh.
Yeah.
Like Jesus is literally in another realm, also in this realm, but the Spirit, whatever you want to call it, the Spirit of God is using me in this world just like we would a video game in a first-person game, and we're using that avatar. And if you watch that movie Ready Player One, this will really take on a whole another level. Highly recommend that movie. It's really good. But I think that's the moment that Nathaniel had. And I said all that to say this. I had no idea what your scripture was for tonight. Yeah. So I get done writing all this down. Like I wrote 6-7 pages on this dream and the interpretation. And then I open up where Brent wants to go tonight from where you've been. And it's Nathaniel under the fig tree, realizing that this is it.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
This is the moment for us all to see,
yeah.
Hey, your life is more than the fate of some election.
Yeah. That's it.
Your life is more than whatever your job may be right now.
Mm-hmm.
Your life is more than whatever your relationships may be right now.
Yes.
Your life is more than whatever condition you may be in yourself, in your body.
Yes.
Like, it's so much more.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what are we doing? We are offering this, we are passing the torch on to our children and their children and their children and their children. We're passing on the consciousness that this is so much more than whatever circumstance you may be overcome by. Yeah. And I think that's what's happening with Nathaniel. I know I've said that a couple times now.
Well, but I think to your point, it's in the awakening that, and it's like I said Sunday, we make the changes in the system from within the system, right? Yeah. But you have to be outside the system in a sense to be able to see what the issues are with the system.
Right.
And so I talked about the Kaizen and process improvement and all that stuff on Sunday. And I sort of joked about the fact that like a company that I used to work for, they would bring people in, they'd train them for a couple of days, and now they know all there is to know about what we actually came to find out was a system that came up or that was developed in the 1800s. So whatever, a couple hundred years old, 14. It was 1400. That's right. Teresa was telling me that on Sunday. So it's more like whatever 600 years old. But anyways, you take this idea and what they would do is, or what they do now. With this process improvement and these Kaizen events or whatever you want to call them, actually go in and look at a process, right? Theoretically, it would be in a plant that produces some kind of a good or something. And they look at that, look at the line. They look at the assembly line. They look from the time that the raw materials arrive to the time that they pump out the actual product, right?
Yeah.
Like, from start to finish. What is this process? What is the system doing? How does it operate? And where are the pitfalls? Where are the areas where we're losing productivity and, things aren't moving or operating quite as efficiently as they could? Where are the parts that are, the in the system that are having breakdowns? Whether that's some form of communication or whatever, right? And so they look at it from the outside. Then they give that information to people that are on the inside, right, that are operating in the system, and they use that information to implement change. And it's the same in the individual or in the family or in your relationships, whether it's an intimate relationship or it's a friendship or whatever the case is, right, parent-child relationship. You have to sort of take yourself out of your body. You have to take yourself out of the situation, and you have to try to look at it as objectively as possible, right? Because and just as a for instance, if you go into one of these Kaizen events or whatever, or you're utilizing this theory to analyze a process, when you go in and you talk to, say, the guy on the floor who is putting together the parts, and then you go and talk to the manager of the operation, and then you go and talk to the maintenance guy, and then you go and talk to this person and that person in these various departments, you're going to get different stories from everybody, right? Well, this is what's wrong with the system. No, that's fine. This is what's really wrong with the system. And it's like, okay, you have to pull yourself out of the system, look at it as objectively as possible, right? I need to look at it from my point of view and the emotions that I'm feeling and all the things that are going on. And then I need to look at it from this other person's point of view and their emotions and what they might be thinking and so on and so forth, right? And in the process, and this kind of to your point about the arguing, right? I mean, I can't tell how many times. Oh God! I mean, this is some what do you call it? This is inside baseball here.
Yeah. Confession.
So confession time.
You can stop right now.
Forgive me, Father.
You don't have to go any further.
No, I'm going to do it.
All right,
it's going to be ugly. There will be blood. So. One of my, or I guess the way, I suppose, and actually me and my wife are guilty of this, but the way that we argue a lot of times is we don't argue, right? We don't talk to each other, right? So it's very passive aggressive. It's very, like shun, like,
why I'm not speaking.
Dwight and Andy, yeah, like shun.
You know why I'm not speaking.
Yeah. So yeah, it is. It's like that. I forget where I was going with that. Oh, yeah. So I've lost days, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we've lost
trying to win a silent argument.
Dude, it's like, yeah. And then when you do talk to each other, it's like, you're just like at each other's throat. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I keep waiting on you to apologize.
Hey, yeah. I mean,
at that point, you've already forgotten what it was about.
Yeah, you don't even know what you're arguing about. You're just mad because you're mad, right?
But what a revelation.
But you lose that time, right? It's like
fast forward.
Exactly.
I'm freaked out by this.
And how many of those days, right? When you think about the context of that whole situation, right? Yeah, because it's like, okay, we could have just, for one, I could have said, wait, you know what? Hold on, let me think about this. How am I feeling? Okay, well, this is how I feel about it. Blah 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 blah. How do you feel? Okay, that's how you feel. All right, well, let me try to see it from that point of view.
Right.
Let me try to understand that perspective. Let me try to understand how I might have done something to contribute to, where this situation went wrong, right? And maybe you're not in the wrong, but here's the deal. This is where, at least the Christian philosophy comes in, the theology comes in, right? Is that, hey, I may not be wrong, but the best thing I can do right now is to lay down my arms.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I don't need to strike you. I don't need to cut your ear off, because when I pull my sword out, immediately your hearing is cut off, right? So I say that to say that there are these days that are lost, right? I mean, and there again, we've matured a lot over the years, so it's more like hours at this point.
Yeah.
But when that happens, right, you realize.
Mm-hmm.
You wake up.
Yeah.
You do wake up eventually, or hopefully you do. We do. We wake up eventually and we say, oh, Jesus, like what are we doing here?
I missed it.
Like
it's Ebenezer Scrooge.
Yeah, I'm being stupid. And so I have to take myself out of the system, right? And mostly out of my own emotions about the whole thing, and I have to say, okay, this is where I was dumb and ridiculous. And she may do the same thing or whatever, and then we'll apologize.
Oh,
and
but
move
my
on.
God, the healing in the soul when you do that.
Yeah,
the connection.
Yeah,
and whatever relationship you may be in. I mean, a marriage, a friendship.
Yeah, it don't matter.
Sometimes it's even stronger in a friendship where you haven't reached that level yet, where you're close enough to someone to have that type of argument or that type of disagreement, and really, you take that disagreement. And if you only analyze it through the ego, then that's the end of the friendship.
Yep, that's it.
But if you analyze it as the person, and you're like, okay, now our friendship's taking on another level where he's inviting me in to be even closer, because we're having a legit disagreement now. And instead of siding with the ego and doing away with the friendship, you say, I was wrong.
Yep.
And then when you say, "Oh my God, that's Jesus,"
And
that's
I
Jesus.
think
Like,
I think
that's a connection.
some of the most impactful moments for me has been as a parent doing
Yeah.
that. Specifically,
Yeah, I
with-
was wrong.
Yeah, with my son, like, times of maybe even as a parent, I have the right to be angry or disappointed or whatever.
Yeah,
And yet, when that happens, instead of remaining in my anger or remaining in my disappointment, right?
Yeah.
I'm able to go to him and
Mhm.
say, hey, and there again, I may have already gotten to the point of anger and frustration and disappointment, but I'm able to go to him and say, hey, this is what I'm feeling.
yeah,
This is why I'm feeling this way,
Yeah.
right? And 9 times out of 10, it's because like they're not living up to our not expectations, but it's almost like
Our
they're not
plan.
living up to the level of not necessarily achievement. That's not the word. It's like potential. They're not living up to their potential, right?
Yeah.
That we see in
Right.
them,
Yeah,
right?
that's a good way to put it.
And it's like
You could be so much more if you would just do what I said
exactly
and act the way I told you to act.
Exactly. And it's like as a parent, I've had to like step back and say, oh, God, okay, I shouldn't have been like that, right?
Yeah.
I shouldn't have been yelling and hard and whatever and
Right.
and fussing or whatever the case is, right?
Mhm.
I shouldn't have been that way with you because of this. I should have sat down and had a conversation just like this, and explained or encouraged you in the area of your potential, right? To
Mhm.
know that you have all the potential in the world to be this, and this, or to do this and that and whatever, because you have these gifts and abilities and strengths and so on and so forth, right? Or you have these areas that need to be cultivated, and if you'll cultivate them, then you'll reach this potential. And I think that is what God does with us, right?
Right.
That is the person of Jesus coming to show that in incarnation, in the incarnation, just like you read, there is this ascension, right? There's this idea that we're coming out of this. We got to get out of the system for a moment.
Right.
We have to go above the system, above the
Yeah.
current level of
Right.
thinking, right? And when we ascend, then we can descend again. So these messages, these ideas, these thoughts, they're coming up and they're going down back into the incarnation, which is you. That's
Right.
you. So in Christ, he shows us, he reveals to us, right? Even the Father literally saying, this is my son.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm pleased with him.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, what does that mean for us? Right? Okay, that means if we find some way to behave like Christ and believe like Christ, more importantly, right? If we can learn to believe like him, to have this new understanding, this new system that can be implemented in our lives, then we're going to receive that same message, right?
Yes.
And all along the message is, I'm pleased with you. I'm pleased with you. Now
go.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, exactly.
Now get going.
We can put an asterisk by that to say that your current state may not be the state that, I'm going to put this in quotes, pleases God, right? So when we think about this, right? I have a teenager. You have a teenager. You have a teenager.
Yeah.
If we said right now, okay, I'm not saying we don't love our children, but I'm saying if we said to them right now, you're perfect.
Gotcha. Fumble.
Get this out of here.
Recovered.
See,
still
I
driving.
need some first order changes. Stop talking with your hands.
It would also help if you weren't 18 foot tall.
That's
I mean, his arms are too
7.5 foot wingspan. Okay, so if you said to your child right now, you're perfect the way you are,
Mm-hmm.
what does that tell them?
That's a good point.
There's no need
There's
to
no need
change.
to do anything.
There's no need to adapt. There's no need
Yeah.
to improve. There's no need to
Good point.
seek. There's no
Yep.
need to be curious. There's no need to strive. There's no need to stretch. There's no need, right?
Every time that they mistreat one of their siblings, well, I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm good.
Right.
It's like, no, that's not appropriate behavior.
That's not acceptable. Well, you said I was okay the way I am. Right?
Man, it's just like when you talk about the Kaizen thing.
Yeah.
So take that even a step further in a plant, like when you're or any business. If you're a manager, what do you have to do for your employees? You have to do a quarter or annually review.
Yeah.
The worst thing you could do is
Oh, boy.
if you just give them a standard review.
Oh boy.
or speaking in my case too, because I've had plenty of those reviews where it's just like, oh, you're meeting all the expectations, or you're doing all the things.
Yep.
Thanks.
But the best reviews I've ever had are the ones that say, all right, here's where you're superseding, here's where you're meeting, and here's where I really see potential.
Yes.
Here's where I really see you growing.
Yep.
If that review is detailed,
Yep.
then that employee or us or whoever is going to perform on a much higher level just because of the honesty of the manager or whoever it may be writing the review.
And because they have a goal.
Yeah.
They have something
Yes.
to aim at. They have something to strive for. They have
Yeah.
something to reach after, right?
Right.
They have something to seek. And so if we can present that to our children, if we
Good.
can present, which is what
Very
God
good.
does to us, right?
Yes.
That's what he did in Christ. He said, I'm pleased with you, and.
Yeah.
Right? Not really a but. It was like, I'm pleased with you, and there's something for you to do.
Mhm.
And there's somewhere for you to go.
Right.
And there is a purpose.
Mhm.
It's not just like, Nathaniel, you're not going to spend the rest of your life sitting under the fig tree. Right? There is something for you to do. There is somewhere for you to go.
Yeah. Think about what Nathaniel said, though. There's context there. Because he said there's nothing good that comes out of Nazareth.
Right.
Yeah.
So that tells you that's the only indicator that you have of what his internal dialogue may be.
Yeah.
And his internal
Terrible
dialogue
belief.
and his internal dialogue is, I'm as honest and transparent as I can possibly be. I'm a realist. I'm
Yep.
straightforward. And I know there's nothing new under the sun. Nothing good comes out of Nazareth. Never has. Never will.
Yep.
I'm just this. That's all I'll ever be. Because if you don't believe anything good will come out of Nazareth, you're also believing I am what I am. There's no goal.
There's
There's no goal.
There's nothing.
It's nihilism.
Nowhere to go.
It's nihilism.
Yep. And that's exactly what I say we, but I'm saying that's exactly what the message that you're sending to your teenager, right, who is already anxious and depressed, okay, because of all the emotions and things that they're dealing with and the physiological changes that are going on. They're anxious and depressed. You're telling them there's nothing to live for.
Right.
There's nothing more that
If
you
you
could
tell
do.
if you tell them you're perfect the way
You're
you are.
perfect the way you are.
Wow.
You're fine the way you are.
That's good.
Well, I beg to differ. If somebody would have told, what's the old Yankees player, not Babe Ruth, but
Babe
the other
Ruth.
guy,
Lou Gehrig.
Lou Gehrig.
Yeah.
If somebody would have told Lou Gehrig that, right? I mean, what would that guy have done?
Right.
Probably nothing.
Right.
Right. But that was not the way he saw it.
Right.
The way he saw it was, I need to be out here. I need to be playing all the time. I need to be practicing all the time. I don't need to miss a game. I don't need to do. And even when he
Cal Ripken Jr. would be another great. He's the one that
Yeah.
has the Ironman record. He played the most consecutive games.
Yeah, that's right.
And it
oh
was
Cal Ripken.
Cal Ripken
Okay.
Jr.
Well,
yeah.
Lou Gehrig, at one point he found
Sorry,
himself.
I went nerd there for a minute.
That's all right. He
We
found
know it.
himself drinking a lot, right? He got to a point where he was drinking every day.
Yeah.
And one of the managers on the team recognized that and told him, said, "Hey man, you don't need to fool around with that stuff.
Yeah.
You need to stop.
Man, I
You
feel
see what
God. That's God.
You see what these other boys are doing?
That's God.
That ain't you.
Right.
You need to cut that out." And it dropped it immediately
Right.
because a father stepped in and said, "Hey,
Yeah.
there's somewhere to improve
Come
here."
on, dude.
Yeah. Well, I'd say it's less about the behavior, but it's something that's activating the belief.
Oh, absolutely.
So if you don't activate the belief, then the behavior is just going to go right back to the same behavior.
That's right.
But
right.
that's what
That's right.
you've talked about that before about behavior modification. That's what the church has been good at.
Yeah.
Is saying you can't do this, can't do that, can't dress like this, can't look that way. So it's all about it's all about external things, but it's never really embodied. It's never really lived because it's not really believed.
Yeah.
You can't live it if you don't believe it. You're
Right.
just going through the motions. So it's like what Freud would talk about when he talked about the sacraments that the church keeps, and he said that they were useless because nobody believes them.
Mm-hmm.
And so for him, of course, that was his experience with his church, which his church probably sucked. I hate that that's the church experience that he had because he was such a genius and had such a great understanding of cognition, of understanding of how the mind and how the brain works, how we do a lot of this stuff. But for him, he says, well, when I go to a religious service and I watch the ritual is just for what was something I had to write it down the other day for something. It was it just promotes the cooperation, and it really just goes in it's the connection between neurotic behavior.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That ritual is it's the connection between neurotic behavior and that even though the ritual might be full of meaning and symbolism, it's lost by the observers because they can't connect with it. But they're not thinking from that space. They're not thinking from that frame. They're just going through behaviors, and they're just going through motions. But that's the thing about what I think it was Aquinas that said that Jesus was the ultimate sacrament. He was the sacrament from which all sacraments flow.
Yes.
That he's the one that gave himself
Yeah.
fully to be the thing, to be the place or the space really where all this play starts to take place,
Yeah,
where all this happens. But it's where
He is literally the metaverse.
he's the metaverse, and it's the place where all this is happening is in him.
That's
And
amazing.
you're living, you're moving, you're having your
That's
being
great.
in Christ.
Man.
But that's the only way to create a change in what you believe.
Yeah.
So it's like with Lou Gehrig, hey, it's not just about your baseball.
Yep.
This is about your relationships. This is
Yep.
about your life. This is about
Rest of your
everything.
life.
And so it's not just him thinking about, oh, if I drink and I get worse and worse and worse, and or whatever else, this behavior is going to overtake me. But it's comes from a place of what he believes.
That's right.
So for him, he believed that I need to be on the field and I need to play consistently, and even to the point where he started feeling the sick, his own disease that nobody had ever had,
Right.
that begins to take over his body. He kept on playing
Right.
longer than he should have,
Yep.
because this is what he believed.
Right.
He believed this is what he was made for. This is what he was supposed to do, and he kept doing it until the bitter end, until he couldn't do it anymore. But that's the thing too about, let's just say that it is from the sacrament or from the Eucharist, from taking communion, that the bread and the wine, it becomes this tangible, natural thing, but you believe something different about it.
Yes.
So it's like what I forget. Gosh, I can't remember her name, but I think she teaches at Notre Dame. But one of the things that they were talking about was the ritual of the sacrament. And so let's just take, for instance, two guys that are in prison that don't have access to wine. The bread that they have is probably not great quality. It's not blessed by a priest for darn sure. So, but all they've got is high C and some moldy bread. And you're going to say that illicit action outside of the sacrament or outside of the ordained perfect space and whatever is that is valid, that is invalid in some way, or that it doesn't matter. It's like, it's because they believe it.
Yeah.
That's what mattered. And that's what mattered to the first church, is that they believed in all this Jesus stuff.
Yes.
They believed it before they had a text to tell them.
That's right.
So this is the thing that was getting me when you were saying that is Jesus' prayer in John 17.
Oh yeah.
And he says that, Father, I've given them your word, Logos. I've given them your logic. So now that's not a Bible when he's praying that.
That's right.
Because John's just now writing this.
Yep.
And it's barely distributed until maybe around the year, maybe 100, maybe 200. I don't know. This is decades after Jesus has lived and died. Paul has already written some of his letters. Some of them are in distribution and all through different churches. But you can't really quantify that, because when the letters all show up, when the epistles, the gospels, everything shows up so many 100 years later. But when he's saying, Father, I've given them your word, he's not talking about a written document, because none of them could probably read anyway in first century Judea.
Yep.
I've given them your logic.
Yes.
And the world has hated them.
Yeah.
But they hated me.
Yeah.
Because I'm not of the world.
Yeah.
I'm part of this world, or I'm living in this world, but it's not where my origin, it's not where my source is out of. Yes, I'm in this system, but I'm not of this system, because I've already been outside of it, and I've observed what is needed.
Yes.
There's a belief change that's needed.
Oh,
so when John 1:18 rolls around and he says, nobody's ever seen God. We think we have.
Yep.
We've been in the system.
Yep.
We've been so immersed into what we think we know about God and how we think we perceive God, or how we think we've seen God. And then he says, nobody's ever seen God except for the Son who's in the bosom of the Father.
Yep.
That's what John 1:18 is trying to show. So when you are thinking about what does God look like, God looks like a father holding his child. And you're that child.
Man.
You're that baby in the bosom, or the embrace, or near the heart of the Father.
Man.
So and it says, so Jesus has declared him.
Yeah.
Jesus has made him known. And how did he make him known? It's changing what they believe.
Yep.
They believed that God was distant. They believed that God was far off. They believed that God was pleased and appeased by their sacrifices, by
Yeah.
the things that they could offer, by the things that they could give. And here's Jesus entering into their system to
Yeah.
show within the system,
Yep.
you believe something wrong.
Yep.
You believe something that's not assisting or aiding you in any
Mhm.
way. But if you see yourself as a child in the embrace of a father in every situation, and that changes your belief.
Yes.
If you are a kid who you fight with your sister, or you're dealing with depression, or you're dealing with anxiety, or you're dealing with whatever else, and everybody keeps telling you that you're perfect, no, that's not what's happening. Instead, you realize, I have these problems.
Yes.
I do have fears.
Yes.
I do have issues. I do have things that I get terribly wrong, but even in those things that I get terribly wrong, I'm embraced.
Yeah.
And in that embrace, I know that I have comfort to get it wrong and to learn to get it right.
Yeah, I have the space. That to your
Yes.
point earlier, I have the space, right?
Right.
I have the place to be able to do all of this.
Right.
Because and that there again, that's what Jesus came to show us. He's in the incarnation.
Yeah.
That's where everything is being funneled to,
Mhm.
is to the incarnation of Christ.
Mhm.
And now, because of the Spirit, because Jesus said, it's good that I go away.
Yeah.
It's a good thing that I go away so that the Parakletos can come, right? So that the Spirit can come. Why? To give us access. Now we have open access because of what Jesus did and who He was. Now the Spirit has come. We have open access.
Yeah.
Now we're the ones who are receiving that up and down, that vertical message,
Yeah.
right, from the ascending and descending from heaven into our incarnation.
Right.
And it's coming right into this space to give you that place to work out those issues, all of those problems that come up.
That's what Francois was quoting Paul when he said, for now we see in a mirror dimly or through a glass darkly, but then face to face. Now I know in part, but then I shall know just as I also am known.
Yep.
And that's what happens to Nathaniel.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Nathaniel is seeing himself in the fact that nothing good comes out of Nazareth.
Right.
He's seeing himself. He's seeing his own life trajectory.
Oh,
He's
yeah.
already done the analysis.
Yep.
Nothing good happens.
Yep.
It's not worth anything. And Jesus is like, dude, that's terrible.
Yeah, right.
Dude, I was just under the fig tree with you.
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
Yeah.
No, I was literally there. That's God in first person.
Yeah.
He sees that he's the avatar.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the awakening that this life gives us.
Right.
This is what the mirror does. That's what Francois done for us. That's what Pops does for us on so many different occasions. He's told us things that can help us, give us goals to grow. And I encourage all of you, if you're in a situation in your church where it's just every Sunday you just come and you leave, and every Sunday you come and you leave, and there's nobody having a real conversation about your life or how you can grow or what you can do or how you can service someone, how you can minister to someone, how you can give take care of the body of the Lord Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
I encourage you to come here.
Right.
We're gonna help you. I mean, you'll help us.
Yeah.
We help each other. That's the interconnectivity part of it. Like the body of Christ needs to be ministered to.
Yeah.
And what are we doing if we're just being entertained?
Yeah.
And that's modern church.
Right.
That's church in the West for the most part.
Oh, yeah.
That's the
It's
church
just
that Freud
entertainment.
saw. That was Freud's
Right.
church.
That's
Right.
They're just going through motions. They're going through ritual,
Right.
and it just turns into neurotic behavior.
Yeah.
Right.
But instead, if it's a ritual that, if you even want to call it ritual, it has to hold two spaces. That's what cognitive scientists for religion have discovered about all of our rituals in church. It has to be able to hold in two spaces. It has to have enough of an embodiment where it becomes not just a tedious task.
Right.
It has to have that. You have to have that task, but there also has to be this emotional element. But if it just lives on the emotional element, then it's just going to wear everybody out.
Right.
Yep.
And it's going to going to just overstimulate everybody.
Yeah, that's
and so
great.
then it's that's
Because we've been there. We've done that.
Exactly. But that's also what a lot of churches do as well. They have the moment where they have the gotcha, where it's like, we do this in
Emotion.
marketing. It's the way that we sell things.
Absolutely.
But it's the way that I've been trained to sell things
Yep.
in our company, is that you keep your conversation in spikes. If you have the hammock, then you lull them to sleep. But you keep your conversation in spikes and in 5-minute segments. You have changes to your intonation, changes to the way you do this, and you grab people with emotional stories.
Yep.
Now, I think that sermon writing, when I was listening to that, like, well, this is a lot of stuff I learned in seminary. They're talking about, things that that grab people's attention, that keep their attention, things that make an emotional connection. But that's the thing, is if it's just that, then you're going to keep bringing people back, and they're going to get stuck on that, and it's going to they're just going to get high. But that's what we've done in Pentecostalism.
Absolutely.
Is that we keep the emotions high, keep it. It's like a tachometer. I mean, it's like
every time,
and it's like it's something's going to snap on. There's going to be a piston go flying out the.
And then you're only living when you're high.
Well, and the other thing is, it wears off.
It does.
Right.
It doesn't just wear you out.
Right.
It wears off.
Yeah.
And when it wears off, you're left with, I still got to deal with this stuff.
Right.
But if you believe something, then you believe that when I interact with, let's just say that it is bread or wine, or let's just say that it's a foot washing, or let's just say that it's just coming to church and paying your tithes like a normal person, and there's nothing that's extravagant or super spiritual that's happening, but my belief is that when I give, my belief is when I wipe a baby's butt in the nursery, my belief is when I'm handing out Pop-Tarts to 12-year-olds, that something more is happening, that God is involved in what I'm doing, and but that's not going to happen unless there's a change in the belief, unless you change exactly what you believe. So it's like what you were saying earlier about the dream. And if my belief is I've got to be right, if my belief is I'm going to take whatever you've thrown at me and I'm going to chase your tail down with it, and I'm going to beat you up until you vanish. That's like that's a belief change.
Yeah.
But for you, I mean, I've never really known you to be like that. I know you say that you have, but I've never known you to be that type of person that's like, I'm going to defend my faith and defend what I believe, and I'm just going to eviscerate you and tear you apart. But at the same time, like that's a cultural thing within church.
Yeah.
That you cannot get on social media, which I hardly get on there because of that.
Yeah.
If it's not arguing over this Bible verse or this concept, it's like we've got 2,000 years worth of arguments happening on Facebook comments all the time, and you're like, my God, like where did we go wrong, so Jesus? True. And it's but then you think about it, and you're like, you read Galatians, and you're like, all right, well, it's right there.
You know
like
what
they're fighting in Galatians.
You know what that sounds like?
What?
Nothing good comes out of Nazareth.
Nothing good comes out of Nazareth.
Yeah, exactly.
But
that's what it is.
But if the belief doesn't change, then nothing ascends up.
Yep.
And the thing, sometimes you can think of the thing that ascends, that does ascend, as the ascension offering. Yes. The very in the book of Leviticus is like the very first one that they talk about is the offering that everything gets burned.
Everything gets
and
burned.
That's why they called it the ascending offering, or the word is olam, I think, in the
it's
Hebrew.
all going up in smoke.
But everything goes up in smoke. There's nothing that's left,
yep.
and anything that is left falls through the grate.
That's right.
And it becomes part of the fire.
It
becomes part of the thing that has burnt. So there's nothing that's left in this ascending offering.
Yes.
There's nothing that's left, and God gets all of it. That's
yep.
the idea, that
yep.
this whole thing is burnt, and it all ascends up to God. So when I take everything that I think I've built my systems on, and I'm willing to just set them on fire
yep.
and let them ascend up to God as a sweet smelling fragrance or an offering to Him, and say, I had all the systems, I had everything built, and nothing changed my belief.
Yeah.
Can you help me? Can you
yeah.
give me a new belief? Can you help me create a new system?
And to that point, it's not about anarchy. It's not about ripping down the system for the sake of ripping down the system so that there's not a system in place. No, it's burning up the old system for the new system, to put the new stuff in place, or to put it into work. And it's, to your point, you are what you believe.
Yeah.
You're not going to see a change until you change your beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
Your behaviors don't change until your beliefs change. Yes, you might see some of those surface level changes. That's why when people get saved, they come in and they stop their drinking, and they stop their smoking, and they stop their cussing, and they stop all this stuff, right? But then 2 weeks later, and I think Curtis's testimony is probably one of the funniest, that he got saved, and he thought that he could go help out his buddies, and he was going to win them for Jesus, and he got in the car. Next thing you know, he's stoned like the rest of them, right? And it's like, well, yeah, because there's a first order change that has taken place.
Very familiar.
But yes, but you're falling back into that stuff because your belief hasn't quite changed,
Right.
not totally, right? And for him, he had a radical experience, and that completely changed his whole life. But regardless, there has to be that second order change, because otherwise everything else stays the same, right? And the thing with systems, I don't know if I said this on Sunday, but the thing with the system is it desires status quo. It desires equilibrium, rather. And there has to be equilibrium,
Justification.
right? And so that's the status quo. Now, status quo can be something bad. It can be something terrible, right? But the system has to achieve equilibrium, and it does that through getting back into whatever the old behavior is, or whatever, establishing a new status quo. But there again, that's the systemic change. That's the change in belief. I think I told you that on Sunday afterwards. The system itself, like in your relationship with your wife, if you're constantly pursuing her emotionally, and she is running away or evading you, right, emotionally speaking, but then all of a sudden you change and you say, well, I'm not going to pursue anymore because I'm not being pursued, right? Or it's not mutual. And so I'm going to turn the other way and I'm going to run. I'm going to evade. I'm going to move away emotionally. Then the system, because it won't status quo, is going to require change. So for her, she's going to shift roles, and now she becomes the pursuer. Because the system has to have that equilibrium. It's got to achieve a status quo, or it has to try to get back to status quo.
Your body does the same thing with fevers and
100%,
and
yes.
viruses. That there's something that's not right within your body, so elevates the temperature. So it has to change something so that it can achieve equilibrium again and go right back to a normal temperature for your body. So
and it can get back to that status quo. So I say that to say that there's a need for the change, and it has to be deep. It has to be well within the belief, because that's the only way that the system fully changes, because you have to have a balanced system. You can't go on without it being balanced. That's just how they work.
Right. That's right. Just like 4 tires. You gotta have.
You gotta be balanced.
You gotta have your tires balanced, or one of them's gonna have not last as long.
That's
exactly right.
And then you're gonna be on the side of the road, not in the race.
That's right.
Yes, exactly.
I wanna read this just to put a bow on this. I heard this on the way over here, and I think it's fitting. You guys will know the song once you hear a couple of the lyrics. But ticking away the moments that make up a dull day, you fritter and waste the hours in an offhand way, kicking around on a piece of ground in your hometown, waiting for someone or something to show you the way. Hello, Nathaniel. Tired of lying in the sunshine, staying home to watch the rain. You are young and life is long, and there is time to kill today. And then one day you find 10 years have got behind you. No one told you when to run. You missed the starting gun. And you run to catch up with the sun, but it's sinking and racing around you to come up behind you again. The sun is the same in a relative way, but you're older, shorter of breath, and one day closer to death. And then the outro is, every year is getting shorter, never seem to find the time. Plans that either come to naught or half a page of scribbled lines. Hanging on in quiet desperation is the, I'm going to change that, American way. The time is gone, the song is over, thought I'd something more to say. I'm sorry, this is the outro. Home, home again. I like to be when I can. I like to be here when I can. Home, home again. I like to be here when I can. When I come home cold and tired, it's good to warm my bones beside the fire. Now that's the awakening. That's the synapsis. Far away across the field, the tolling of the iron bell caused the faithful to their knees to hear the softly spoken magic spells. And that's Time by Pink Floyd.
Yep.
I'm telling you, if you just have a little bit of faith and a little bit of just give you just a little bit of imagination, and not say nothing good comes out of Nazareth, you just might find that you're God in first person.
Yep.
And the system failure was all a part of the plan.
Yeah.
Just like the law had to fail, your system had to fail, your internal dialogue had to fail for you to see the manifestation of Jesus Christ face to face. I feel Jesus, man. All right. Guys, thanks for joining us tonight. We invite you to come this Sunday. We invite you to share the stream, download the app. Continue to, if the Lord lays it on your heart to give to the ministry, there's a link below where you can click to do that. It'll help us make some renovations that we need to make here to make our message and our reach a little bit further. But anyway, more important than all that, we want to just love on you. We want to get to meet you. If you're just tuning in, maybe never tuned in before, maybe you're seeing this stream 10 years from now in the future. I guarantee you can come to 1508 Hargrove Avenue. Somebody's going to be here waiting to love on you. Okay? So, everybody, say it with me. I love him.
I love him
because he first loved me.
God bless you.